Are you comfortable, Judge Slingers?
As comfortable as I can be. Thank you, Chief Justice. Good evening. Good
All
evening,
right.
Commissioners.
I apologize, we kept you waiting.
Not a problem.
You have 3 law degrees from UCT, BA, LLB, and a Master of Laws in Criminal Justice, and another Master of Laws in Public, Constitutional, and International Law from UNISA.
That's correct, Chief Justice.
Yeah. You started out as an attorney in 1995 and remained there, working your way up to director by May 1999, but left the cyber in December 2001. And there was a spell when you were not working. We don't want to know what you were doing or not doing with yourself during that period. You joined the NPA in 2002, and as a state advocate, and worked your way up to senior state advocate and then deputy director by March 2008.
That's correct, Chief Justice.
But then you left in 2010 to do pupillage and joined the bar in 2010 still.
That's correct.
And you practice as an advocate until your appointment as a judge?
That's correct,
2019.
Chief Justice.
Okay. Did you act as a judge before December 2019, the date of your permanent appointment?
I did. My first acting stint was in the last term of 2017, if I'm not mistaken, and then intermittently between then till my date of appointment, I acted as well.
In that court?
In that court.
All right. And you wrote judgments?
I have written judgments, Chief Justice.
Many?
Many.
Any reported?
Quite a few reported. If I have to estimate, I've written, I think, over 100 judgments in my complete stint as acting and as permanent judge, and I think about 15 are reported to my knowledge, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less.
All right. You listed reserved, is it reserved judgments or parthead matters? Those 3 matters?
The 3 were reserved judgments.
All right. Have they been delivered?
They have been delivered, and if you give me an opportunity, I can tell you exactly when they have been delivered. On page 15, in respect of paragraph 16.5.1, the matter of State versus Franke, that was indeed handed down on the 1st of August 2024. The next one, the matter of State versus Vasanti, that was handed down on the 30th of June. And the third one, FHK Electric, was handed down on the 18th of June, 2024.
All right. Do you have any leadership experience in the judiciary?
I had no leadership role or position in the judiciary, but I have had leadership roles.
Yes, you've done courses in management, and as a deputy director at the NPA, you had managerial tasks, not so?
That's correct, Chief Justice.
All right. You are aware that a number of the professional bodies think you are not ready for this position. They all speak of your relative inexperience as a judge, not just as a leader now. What would you say to those charges?
I've seen the comments, Chief Justice, Commissioners, and I have responded to it in writing. But I'd also like to say that if one looks at my total legal experience, I have 29 years. And as I said, a judge president is first and foremost a judge. And I think if this body evaluates my vision, the steps that I want to take for the division, the issues I've identified, how I can improve and how I can grow the division, then they will see that my years on the bench is but one aspect of my legal experience and exposure. And I do believe that it's this body itself, when it set out the requirements for the appointment to a leadership position didn't make acting in that position a prerequisite.
Of course.
And I would not be the first to be appointed to a leadership position having only been appointed for a short time period. In fact, my appointment did not be the shortest serving period as a judge before being elevated, if recommended, to a leadership position in the judiciary.
Yes. Okay, let's hear this vision you mentioned, but as you take us through the paces, just bear in mind that we have a whole day full of visions under our belt. By now, we have a fair idea what's going on in that division, so just try to be as crisp as possible.
I will do my best, Chief Justice. Let me start by saying that my vision is for an effective, efficient division that dispenses transformative justice, where judges not only do their best, but where they are able to be their best. This vision is informed by my legal personality and character, which are the products of my experience and exposure. I was born and raised and educated in Cape Town. In fact, my first court appearance was in Court 6, the Children's Court in Wynberg, as an attorney. From there, I have appeared both in the regional and district courts, both as a prosecutor and as a defense attorney in civil matters and in criminal matters. I've acted as a small claims commissioner. I have appeared in courts from Vredendal to Somerset West to Khayelitsha to Delft to Cape Town. I've acted in this division. I've been appointed in this division. What this does, it has given me a unique insight into the courts, the presiding officers, and the people that use that courts, and to know what obstacles they face and to know what is required. In other words, Chief Justice, Commissioners, I'm invested in the people of the Western Cape. I can empathize with them, I can understand them, I can identify with them. And this insight would allow me to grow, empower, and upskill not only the judges of the High Court, but all the presiding officers of all tiers of the court that fall within the division. Because at the end of the day, I would not be Judge President of the High Court, I'd be Judge President of the division. So I need to have a vision that incorporates all the courts, all the presiding officers. I can tell this commission that I know what it's like to feel the frustration of getting a document filed at court. I know the discomfort and indignity of having to sit in a court that's held in a prefabricated building. And I know the frustration of a broken court equipment that results in delays. And all of these detract from a professional, efficient, user-friendly court system that provides dignified access to justice. I will liaise and canvass with other stakeholders to improve the existing systems in order that there are competent and adequate responses to socio-economic problems faced by society, such as increasing poverty, homelessness, and increased organizational crime, including human trafficking. It is common cause that South Africa is the most unequal country in terms of wealth distribution. This is more pronounced in the Western Cape. Therefore, it is important for the Western Cape judiciary to understand and respond appropriately to this glaring disparity. It can be accepted that the biggest obstacle to attaining a truly transformative constitutionalism is the continuing disparities of wealth and power that exist in South Africa and the Western Cape. I should add that I am aware that widespread transformation of economic and social conditions is beyond the power of the courts alone. But it is only when the judicial commitment is coupled with legislative reform and appropriate executive action that the wealth disparity can be eradicated and properly addressed. I believe that as the Judge President is first amongst equals, she should not be seen as a boss micromanaging the presiding officers under her supervision. To this end, I will embrace a leadership of justification and not a leadership of authority. A leadership of justification requires a Judge President to be accessible, transparent, accountable, and responsible. It requires a Judge President to talk with people, not at people. It requires a Judge President to earn respect and to give respect and not to demand it. And it requires a Judge President to earn the trust of the people. While I have earned the trust of my colleagues and the support staff and stakeholders in my role as a judge, I believe that I can earn their respect in my role as a leader of the judiciary. I know this takes time, and I know building trust takes time. But I have time on my side, and I am committed to spending this time to growing the Western Cape High Court and the Western Cape Division as a whole. This court, the Western Cape Division, requires consistency and consolidation. I am prepared to be the anchor that this division needs. When respect is earned and appropriately extended, a judge president is willing a judge president who is transparent and willing to listen. It will assist in building legitimacy, not only for its own court, but for the judiciary as a whole. I have seen firsthand how lack of transparency and accountability can have a negative impact on the legitimacy and morale of that court. I have observed an increase in the unrepresented litigant. We will strive to ensure that these litigants are not exposed to an intimidating environment, but one that is user-friendly, professional, efficient, and respectful. In inquiring how often informal potpourris are used in our court, it was clear that there is a huge need for legal assistance by litigants who do not qualify for legal aid or pro bono assistance. To this end, I intend to liaise with all the stakeholders to set up a help desk at the court building that would be manned by members of the profession in discharge of their pro bono obligations. They could assist the unrepresented litigant with completing forms, with explaining everyday legal jargon that we take for granted and which is completely foreign and intimidating to in-person litigants. Pro forma forms could also be drafted, which would make it easier for lay litigants to complete and to access the legal system. For example, you get first-year practitioners who are not yet able to act as small claims commissioners. They could discharge their pro bono obligations while sharpening their skills, increase their exposure to the practical side of a legal practice, while at the same time providing support to the unrepresented litigant. Generally, people don't come to court unless they have to or they are desperate. Being summoned to court is a daunting and intimidating thing, and we need to put these people at ease. By putting them at ease and making them comfortable, it goes to increasing access to the judicial system. We also need to take into account that the nature of crime has changed. It has become more structured, more organized, and is no longer localized. Therefore, I believe ongoing communication and cooperations between different divisions through the Office of the Chief Justice will become increasingly necessary. These organized crimes are national. They need to be addressed on a national level. They are not provincial. It would also facilitate creating uniformity in our jurisprudence in dealing with these matters, thereby preventing forum shopping. It could also result in the maximize of our shared resources and increase access to justice. Each division has its own strengths, and we can learn from one another. I would also have regular meetings that are minuted, which addresses substantive issues. By holding regular meetings that focus on issues of substance, it allows the division to transform as a whole, to brainstorm, and to formulate a collective response to common issues. Minutes will allow for institutional memory to be retained and for increased accountability. It also provides a means of measuring outcomes. This will ultimately result in buy-in and ownership by the judges of the division. I have a good relationship with all my fellow judges, the support staff who assist us, as well as other stakeholders, such as the Office of the Family Advocate, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, and members of the profession. My interpersonal skills will enhance my ability to fulfill my role as Judge President. I believe to be an effective and efficient Judge President, you need to continuously understand the interests and needs of those you lead. Therefore, it is essential that you remain in the trenches, so to speak. If afforded the privilege to serve as Judge President, I will continue to discharge the obligations generally expected of a judge. When you walk the same walk, it is easier to understand the developments in the profession and needs and challenges faced by the judicial officers and support staff under your care and address these effectively. I will use case allocation positively to empower and for the transfer of skills without sacrificing the quality of justice. This will ensure that each judicial officer is continuously provided with the opportunity to grow his or her skill set. This body has repeatedly heard that when senior judges retire, it leaves a gap of skill, of expertise. If all the judges are empowered and upskilled, there wouldn't be that gap. There shouldn't be a gap when members of the judiciary retire, because those that come afterwards that are appointed more recently should have been sufficiently upskilled and empowered, not only to be elevated to higher courts, but to lead the division jurisprudentially where they serve. Case allocation should also not continue skewed briefing patterns. This body has heard that there's a problem with skewed briefing patterns, but it's more problematic when case allocations perpetuate skewed briefing patterns, when matters are allocated on perceived expertise of judges based on their practice or the expertise that they had before. That is a means of disempowering and disheartening judges. We need to upskill, we need to empower, we need to realize that every judge, given the opportunity, can take his or her role in managing the judiciary, in contributing to the judiciary. I would also identify management tasks that can be rotated amongst the judges in the division to allow for those who have an appetite and a willingness to participate in the leadership of the division. Case allocation should also be done to prevent forum shopping, which is prevalent in the Western Cape. And it should also have as one of its objectives the finalization of matters and the prevention of parted matters. It must be done in an equitable, fair, and balanced manner, and must, as far as possible, be done in a transparent and open manner. Based on the latest update, there were 21 judgments that were outstanding for longer than 6 months, and 41 that were outstanding for longer than 3 months. In addressing this, I'd firstly ascertain whether the information captured is correct, and then engage with the individual judge to ascertain what, if anything, can be done to address the delay. Some of the outstanding judgments are by acting judges. The failure to get judgments out timeously is problematic. If acting judges are struggling and not prioritizing getting out of judgments, I would consider whether or not he or she should be invited back for a further term. This would bring me to how I would appoint acting judges. Judicial recruitment and selection process must maximize the diversity of each bench, not only in respect of race, gender, and ethnicity, but also in respect of professional background, abilities, and experience. I would look for judicial candidates who have the following characteristics: judicial temperament, intelligence, ethics. And in this regard, I would also liaise with the oversight bodies, such as the Bar Council, the LPC, Chief Magistrates, to ensure that the person who is invited to act is a person in good standing, that there are no complaints against the person, that the person has no disciplinary action pending or findings against him or her. I'd also liaise with the Chief Magistrate in respect of magistrates coming to act to ensure that they don't have parted matters that need the attention, and if needs be, to make the necessary arrangements that magistrates continue to get the opportunity to act without sacrificing their duties in the lower courts. And then I'd also look for legal courage and integrity, because sometimes we are required to make difficult decisions, and being a judge is not often you are not well liked because you make unpopular decisions. You are forced to make hard decisions, so you need legal courage. I will also look for experience and education and the ability to communicate. I will look at a person's health and age. I would establish a practice whereby permanent judges could provide me with a list of potential candidates eligible for acting. I would establish whether by getting the input of other judges in identifying candidates, there would be enhanced transparency in identifying candidates to come and act. I believe that the reintroduction of the continuous role would ensure that cases are finalized sooner, and would also prevent the increase in parted matters. It would also be to the advantage of the legal aid and Director of Public Prosecutor's Office, who themselves have limited personnel and are unable to deal with multiple cases running simultaneously. The increase in parted matters are counter to the right of a speedy trial. In the Western Cape, Fridays were previously kept for appeals, and if you were not allocated an appeal, you were expected to use the Friday either to prepare for the hearing scheduled for the Monday or to work on your outstanding judgments. However, more recently, applications and matters have been allocated to judges on a Friday. I intend to do away with this if appointed or recommended by this body. Preparation and judgment writing is a core part of our core function and should not be neglected. To ignore this core component could compromise the quality of justice being dispensed. Judges are human and are not machines, and therefore we need to ensure that our judges do not burn out and that their well-being is also considered. As Judge President, I will encourage cohesion by affording each judge to sit with one another and not to allocate matters to the same judges or the same panel of judges sitting together. By rotating bench allocations and providing opportunities for judges to speak together and work together with one another, it will result in greater understanding of one another. I will also identify specific judges who could assist with court-based mediation in matters that could be mediated. However, I do need to stress that when court-based mediation takes place, especially in family matters, we should not ignore the Office of the Family Advocate, because the rule that provides for mediation is silent on the child's voice. So we need to make sure that if we do court-based mediation, the child's voice is heard in that process. Chief Justice, that is in essential my vision and broad plans for the division, and I will address anything further based on questions from the commissioners. I understand it's been a long day for the commissioners and the Chief Justice.
No, that's comprehensive enough. I take it that all these great things you propose are not happening as we speak.
No, not to my knowledge, it's not. As I said, there's a lack of transparency at the moment.
Okay. Just to round off on your CV, there are many other things you do, including training of young practitioners, and you do that for the CAPA and the PLA. And you also serve as a member of the Weinberg Small Claims Advisory Board.
That is correct, Chief Justice.
That's important work. All right, you're 51, so you still have about 19 years to look forward to on this bench?
I've got the time and I'm prepared
you have
to
all
invest
the
it.
time in the world. Okay. Judge Gamble.
Thank you, CJ. I have no questions for the...
Thank you. Mr. Bosho?
Thank you, CJ, and Judge Slingers. Good evening.
Good evening.
I just have one question, or it's a two-part question. So, the GCB and various commenters made mention of, perhaps you're not ready, and CJ touched on that, and I noted your reply. And I suppose the nub of it is that, well, how can you gain the experience if you're not offered an acting opportunity, etc.? And I think that's a perfectly fair answer. Under normal circumstances, is my caveat. So my question is, given what we all know and we've been hearing this whole day, is the division really at this point in a state of health to have the luxury of focusing on rotations in critical leadership positions when what is actually now very obviously required is stability and continuity and an unfragmented vision of leadership, even in an acting capacity? And if the answer is, well, yes, perhaps not at the moment, then is your response perhaps not then revealing of a lack of awareness of the milieu in which you find yourself in that division, and perhaps missing the forest for the trees? And let me just finish by saying it's genuinely just a question. I'm not saying that is the case. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Let me answer it this way. I think you are correct. The division is at a stage where it needs strong leadership. If appointed as Judge President, I'm not going to circulate my responsibilities. I will be that leader. I will be the final accountability. The buck stops by me. As head of that court, I take responsibility. But at the same time, I need to empower and upskill the judges in my division. So I need to provide them with opportunities to do that. I need to provide them with the means to transfer skills. I need to provide them with the means of testing their appetite for taking on more responsibilities in the court. I need to provide them with the means of seeing how things are run. I think by rotating management tasks, leadership management tasks, not the leadership of the division, but tasks, it will result in greater transparency, greater trust in my leadership, and greater buy-in. I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, CJ.
Commissioner Baloyi?
Thank you, CJ. Good evening, Judge.
Good evening.
I'm here, yes. Judge, it's really more a follow-up on your discussion with Mr. Boshoff. Your response to the GCB, and especially your references to the other candidates, in the way that you deal with it, you say, if the comments of the GCB are valid, then that also disqualifies the many other candidates because they don't have experience. Now, on the face of it, I think it's a fair comment, but you do appreciate surely that in this position, the GSC has reason to be concerned about absence of evidence of experience in leadership. I've looked at your CV. There's nothing in your CV, at least that I can see, that speaks to your leadership experience. And then, of course, your answers to the GCB's comments, they speak less to your experience in leadership position, but rather focus more on, well, it applies to the other candidates as well. Is it not fair, actually, to be concerned about absence of evidence of leadership?
Thank you, Commissioner. Perhaps my CV is a bit short on setting out my leadership role. As Deputy Director, I led multidisciplinary teams of different professionals. I was responsible for budgetary plans, for management, for allocating tasks. So I do consider that a leadership role. And yes, I've not had a leadership role in judiciary, and this body is correct to be concerned. And I don't mean to be flippant by what I'm going to say next, so I don't mean it with any disrespect or please take it in the sense in which it's meant. When I was reflecting on this issue, I realized that my role as a mother helped prepare me for this. Because as a mother, I've had to do conflict management. I've had to be transparent. I've had to be accountable. I've had to upskill. So there are lots of similarities between raising children or being a parent and judge president of a court, where the court is the home and the judges act like children. I don't mean to be flippant when I say that.
Thank you, Judge. I'm sure your colleagues at the division will have a further discussion with you about that last part.
I expect so.
Thank you, Chief Justice.
President Molemer?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Judge Slingers.
Good afternoon, Judge President.
I listened with interest to the vision that you shared with the Commission, and in response to one of the questions by one of the commissioners, you stated that, and I'm paraphrasing, you are not afraid to take the bull by the horns. And so you have alluded to a few weaknesses that you would correct if appointed. For example, the allocation of other matters other than appeals on Fridays. And your complaint, as I gathered from your response, was burnout because judges now no longer have an opportunity to use that Friday to prepare for cases on Mondays or to write judgments. Now, my question is, as a person who's not afraid to grab the bull by the horns and who has been in that division for quite some time, first of all, maybe let me ask this question. Do you serve in any of the judges' committees?
I serve on the Civil Practice Directive Committee that
Yes.
hasn't sat in a while. I also assist, well, I don't know if it's the Human Resources Committee, but I have been brought in to assist with the appointment of secretaries.
Yes, and you say this, the first one that you mentioned, the Civil Matters Committee has not sat for a while.
It's
Are
not
there
sat for a
any
while.
steps that you, as a member of the committee, took to at least, discuss with the chairperson of the committee with a view to convening meetings of that committee?
No, I have not. The practice directives that was last done was implemented. I think there was going to be a need to sit again after the case lines was rolled out, and at that stage I'd have taken steps so that we could do I would request a meeting so that appropriate directives could be put in place to facilitate that.
Now, as a judge, any judge in any division always has the right to place agenda items for discussion at the judges' meeting. Now, have you ever included these concerns that you have raised here? Have you ever at any stage included them as agenda matters for discussion in a judges' meeting, and have you raised them at the level of judges' meeting?
Thank you. Some of these issues were raised on agendas for the judges' meetings. Unfortunately, the judges' meetings never kept to the agenda, and no issue of substance was really discussed. It wasn't, judges' meetings were taking place once a term, if that. And even though matters were placed on agenda, such as the continuous role was indeed placed on the agenda at a judges' meeting, it simply wasn't gotten to, and the meeting wasn't reconvened to address it.
Yes, specifically with regard to this concern that you raised regarding allocation of other matters, let me call them non-appeal matters on Fridays. Have you ever raised it at a judges' meeting? And I'm talking specifically about you.
It wasn't necessary for me to raise it because it was placed on the agenda. The need for the issues, as I've noted to this committee, was placed on the judges' meetings agenda, just wasn't addressed.
It just wasn't?
It wasn't addressed. It was placed on the agenda for a judges' meeting, not necessarily by myself, but the issues that I've highlighted was brought to the attention of a judges' meeting by placing it on the agenda.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you,
CJ.
President. Judge President Mlambo.
Thank you very much, Chief Justice. Good evening, Judge Slingers.
Good evening, Commissioner.
I think, let me first say, I listened closely to your vision, and I'm impressed, frankly speaking. You've never been in any leadership position in the division, but your vision is on point on what I've heard here for the whole day. So I want to congratulate you for that. Clearly, you've applied your mind to it. One thing that I didn't hear you speak on, maybe I missed it, is how would you, if you were appointed, resolve these skewed capacitation of criminal roles over civil roles?
Thank you. First of all, I think one of the steps I would take is identify acting judges who can do criminal matters. Because at the moment, the majority of judges or acting judges who are appointed are not able or have no criminal law experience. Therefore, the responsibility of doing criminal matters falls to the permanent judges, which removes them from the civil pool completely. So there's also a perception that only certain people can do criminal matters. and that civil matters are reserved for others. So I would appoint more acting judges who are able to take some of the burden off the permanent judges, and I would ensure that judges who have parted criminal matters finalize that first before they get any other responsibility, including other criminal matters.
Just a comment before I go to my next question. You were a director in a law firm. That's a leadership position, isn't it?
It is, thank you, JP.
I think you should
Thank you,
have mentioned
Commissioner.
it because you're shortchanging yourself. But in terms of your judgment writing style, I was impressed. You mentioned here the British tobacco case that was heard during COVID.
That's correct.
That's the one that differed from the Gauteng full court judgment. Am I correct?
You are correct,
And
Commissioner.
yours is the applicable law because the SCA upheld yours, and the appeal on the Gauteng one was settled. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Right. The only judgment that I could note of serious note is the Irankunda judgment that deals with a very obscure area in refugee law, the treatment of surplus claims. The SCA reversed you there.
They did. I understand, though, Commissioner, that the matter is going to go to the Constitutional Court, so I would be hesitant to go into the merits of the matter
Yes.
at this particular forum.
But I think the point I want to make is the SCA didn't make any critical comments about how you went about in that matter. Am I correct?
That's correct, Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you very much, CJ.
Thank you, JP. Commissioner Moimang?
Thank you, CJ. Good evening, Judge Slingers.
Good evening, Commissioner.
So just one question from my side, which I need to be upfront. It puzzles me that we have 5 judges from the same division contesting, getting interviewed for one position. In your judges' meeting, the issue of succession planning for the division, is it not sometimes discussed just in terms of ensuring that you take the division forward? I'll tell you why. In other divisions where we have had interviews of similar nature, you'll find 1 or 2 candidates which clearly relates the message that indeed the judges of that particular division are able to sit down, make a reflection, and come to a common agreement in terms of how do they take the institution forward. Thank you.
Commissioner, I don't want to speak poorly of other candidates who have appeared before this commission, but I think I'm not being unfair when I say that nothing of substance really was discussed at the judges' meetings, and there was no feedback provided. And the issue of succession plans was definitely not raised or discussed at the judges' meetings when they were held.
Thank you, CJ.
Commissioner Hassan? You'll pass.
It's okay. I think I was going to ask a question about uniting the division. Shall I take a stab at it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Judge, I'm over here. I just wanted to ask a very quick one, and it's something just to understand, because we've asked a number of different candidates, given some of the challenges, and you alluded to them, about the different camps and some of the different opportunities given. And I think it's also important to note that it's also become clear that there was only one person who was allowed to act in the position of DJP. So I don't think we should hold it against you that you haven't had that opportunity. But regardless, I'm interested in how you would build a bridge to ensure unity across that division line, but also to ensure maximum cooperation, because one thing that's come through very strongly today is that some people cooperate and some people don't. Thank you.
I think we should start out by acknowledging that a division is a social organization. We've got 33 permanent judges, maybe not the full complement at the moment, but we've got people with strong personalities and egos, so there are going to be disagreements. My role as judge president would not be to get them to like one another necessarily. We are entitled not to like everybody. But what my job as judge president would get them to respect one another and to work together. At the moment, if you look at the latest report on the productivity, the Western Cape is working. We're getting our judgments out. To my knowledge, at this stage, no judge has refused to sit with another judge. We are being productive. We may not necessarily always like one another, but we are sitting together and we are building respect. So, as I said, the more engagement one gives, the more we get to learn to speak, the more we get to learn to work with one another. We'll start finding one another then. Once there's respect, it can go over to liking. And when I was newly appointed, there was a thing called Friday lunches. The invitation was extended. Those who wanted to attend could. Those who didn't want to attend didn't have to. And some judges would attend sometimes, others would not. Also, year-end functions, we haven't had that in years. But I don't think we should force the judges to be best friends. They're never going to be best friends. Part of their role as a judge is to bring an independent mind to bear, which means on occasion you disagree. And sometimes those disagreements can be quite robust. But what I will do is foster respect.
Thank you for making yourself available for this position and for your patience with us. You're excused.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Thank you, Commissioners.